this is the Kuier Rapport Matriekklas 2021. I'm Carmichelle Fransch. I am going to be doing English First Additional Language, and I'm going to be doing some drama prep for paper 2, and this will be on when it's released, it will be video lesson number 10. Right. So, what I'm going to do today, exam skills. What does that mean? When you get that paper, what are you supposed to do with it? You must understand that you're going to receive a question paper with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions. Okay? You have only done 2 genres. That's what that means. Answer only from the genre studied. If you've done short stories and you've done the drama, you're going to answer question 4 and 5. If you've done something else, you're going to answer that. Let me show you what that page looks like. There we go. So if you've done section C, okay, and you've done drama, which is section B, then you're going to choose. If the drama you've done is My Children, My Africa, that's the one you're going to do. And please remember, question 5 always has 2 short stories. You need to answer both. How do I know? How are you going to know that? You'll see that it says there 35 marks. Okay, so 2 genres. One genre, 35 marks, the other one, 35 marks. That will give you 70 marks. However, the 2 short stories will be 18 and 17, and together they will give you 35. Okay, so essentially you are going to have the drama, then 1 short story, then another short story. Guys, I understand that you know this, that you've seen this, that you understand this, but the reason that I felt that I needed to share this with you was because, you know, you become so nervous on the day. And I've seen how children make wrong decisions. Guys, the rest will not be marked. We are only going to look, in paper 2, we look at the first 2 genres that you've done. So if you answer incorrectly and you are spot on with the drama and the short stories, then we are not going to mark the short stories because you've chosen another of these. So we only mark the first 2 genres. So if you do question 1 and 2, we are only going to mark question 1. Please understand how important it is that you choose the genres you have covered in school. I cannot stress this enough. It is vital. Right, let's move on. So, these are types of questions. What does that mean? So your paper, and we like to refer to this as the science of the paper. So if you've watched my previous presentation, then you'll remember I discussed the short stories with you, and I said to you the thing about setting, okay? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to discuss with you in detail each type of question in this paper. So, mix and match, what does that mean? Mix and match basically means that you will get 2 columns, okay, with 1, 2, 3, 4, so A, B, C, D, and then you'll get 5 choices, and you will have to match column A with column B, okay? That's what mix and match means. That's how you answer those questions. That will be 4 marks. Those will be the first 4 marks of your drama question or of your short stories. The other way that they can ask the first 4 questions, box with missing words. What does that mean? So you get a little box and they leave out 4 details and you need to fill in those details. Now, one thing that you must remember, mix and match, box with missing words, where do they get that information from? Guys, that more often than not is the information that you tend to forget. Who are the minor characters? Where are the places that these things are happening? Okay, so Brakwater, Zolile High, number 1 classroom, Mr. Pinai. You need to know all of these things because 4 marks out of 35 is a lot to lose if you do not know your drama back to front. Okay, you need to know your characters. This, I can say with confidence, is exactly the same types of questions that they're going to ask you about your short stories. Remember I said there are 8. So you need to know all 8 inside and out and know that these are the types of questions they're going to ask you. Setting. Remember I spoke about this. Time and place, when and where. Now, this, is new in terms of how it must be answered. They don't want the setting of the drama. They want of the extract. The marker wants you to say, this is happening in number 1 classroom when Tommy comes to warn Mr. M. That is how the setting question must be answered. Okay? True or false? You don't get a mark for true or false. What's going to happen is you are going to be told that the statement is true or false, and then you are going to have to say why. Okay? So if they say something that's false, they will say the following statement is false. Explain why. Okay? Tommy won the quiz. That statement is false. Why? Because Tommy did not participate in the quiz. You cannot answer a true or false question with the opposite and say because he lost. He didn't win because he lost. That's incorrect. He couldn't win because he didn't participate. He decided to join the protest action, to become a comrade, to join the riots. You need to give a reason for why it's false or true. Okay? Comparison between characters. So, question there. Discuss the difference between Mr. M and Tommy in this extract. Okay? So then you can say Mr. M is assertive and he's angry because of whatever reason, and then Tommy is feeling pressured because of that. Okay? So how is Mr. M behaving in this extract? And how is Tommy behaving in opposition to that? Are you with me? So it's very important. This is what the one is doing. This is what the other one is doing. They are opposite each other. You must see that in your mind's eye. Character traits revealed through actions and interactions with others. Remember I spoke about this earlier? This is characterization. What do they do and what do they do through their interactions with others? What does that show about that person? When Mr. M says, when he has that dictionary in his hand and he says, 26 letters. I think this is something like 60,000 words. Okay? And then he's got the stone in the other hand. His interaction with Tommy when he says that tells us Mr. M is completely in favor of using words to resolve a conflict. Because he says, this is a dictionary, this is a stone. This destroys, this builds. Okay? So he says to Tommy, let go of the violence. So his interaction, his behavior, his actions tells us about him. Okay? And that's what that means. Character traits are revealed through how people behave, through what they do. What they do tells us who they are. And remember, it drives the plot. Very important. So, figures of speech, irony, tone, theme, open-ended. Let me explain. Figures of speech, 3 marker. How are they going to ask you that? Identify the figure of speech. And then they're going to say, is it relevant? Is it appropriate in this extract? So whatever the extract is, if you have to identify the figure of speech, it's going to be A, metaphor, 1 mark. B, is it appropriate in this extract? Yes, because it explains how Mr. M feels that words carry more power than a stone. Okay? So when they say appropriate, you don't just say yes because it compares 2 things. You must say what is compared to what and why is it such a good image? Why is that figure of speech showing us so clearly the message that Mr. M wants to portray? Okay, tone. Sorry, no, irony, guys. Irony is always 2 or 0. You can't get one part of an irony question. Okay? And words like however, yet, but. That is what tells you there's a second part that's coming. Okay? So, an irony question is always going to be 2 marks or 0 marks. You can't just get the first part like I've said. So you are going to have to say it is like this, yet, but, however, and then you give us the second part of the irony question. I'll show you an example later on. Tone. Learners struggle often with this because they don't know what it means when you're asked the tone question. So basically that just means, what does it sound like? In this extract, identify Mr. M's tone when he says this. Now if you read the word, and guys, this is where the skills of visual literacy also comes in. Because remember we spoke about body copy with the visual literacy and the cartoons, we spoke about punctuation. If you look at what the person says, okay, and you say it out loud to yourself in your mind, you'll be able to hear. When Tommy says, I don't want any part of myself on this desk in the school, what does that sound like? Does he sound happy about it? Does he sound excited? Does he sound pleased? Or does he sound angry? Does he sound disappointed when he says, I don't want my name on the desk here? That is what tone is, okay? What if he said those words out loud? What would it sound like? And if you're able to recognize that, then you're able to recognize tone. Guys, none of this is rocket science, okay? Like I say, watch the video, press pause, make a note, because it is going to help. This is what they're going to ask you. If you are able to master how to answer, then you are halfway there. Theme. This is the same like in the short stories. However, the drama has themes that covers the entire story, right? But you also have, in the exam, you get a little extract. And you will be asked, you may be asked, that you identify the theme in that particular extract, or discuss the theme in that particular extract. So what do you need to do? Remember earlier I spoke about deconstructing the question. Understand that they are asking you to discuss either the entire drama or the extract that you've been given. You cannot discuss a theme for the drama if you are requested to only answer based on the extracts, right? Open-ended, what does that mean? So open-ended basically means there are different levels of questions, okay? There are 5 levels, right? So open-ended is at the top end, and that means that you need to go and base an opinion on what has happened in the text, okay? Let's give you an example in terms of the drama. When Isabel says, the future is still ours, Mr. M, okay? If they say to you open-ended, when Isabel says that, it shows hope. Hope is a theme in this drama, open-ended, okay? Then, based on the fact that Isabel says that, based on the fact that Mr. M says words can save you, based on the fact that that Tommy goes and meets Isabel, based on the fact that Tommy goes and warns Mr. M, those things show that hope is present in the drama. So if it's open-ended, what must you do? You must give examples from the text, okay, to back up your statement. You can agree or disagree with a statement, but it must always be backed with evidence from the text. Grade 12, everything that you say when you answer this paper must be grounded in the text. What do I mean by that? You cannot have an opinion that is personal. You cannot say, I feel Mr. M is unfair and shouldn't tell Tommy what to do because all adults like to do that. You can't do that. You need to say, grounded in the text, Mr. M should give Tommy an opportunity to decide for himself because Tommy has proven that he can make wise decisions. Everything I've said now is grounded in the text. It's not about what I think. It's not about what you think. It is about what we are reading into the text. Okay? And I must remember that although we've taught you certain things and certain themes and how to do certain things, we are still asking you to interpret what you are reading. But we are asking you to please provide evidence from the text that backs up your interpretation. Okay? Right, what does this mean? These are cognitive levels. So 40% of the paper, which is 40 marks of a 35-mark question, is lower order. What does that mean? That if you struggle a little bit and you are only able to answer 40 marks, and those 40 marks are lower order, which means you'll find the answers in the text. You will just have to reorganize the information a little bit. You can get 14, provided that you know the content of your drama or your short story. Okay, you need to know it. Then you can get those. Remember when I said the four marks in terms of mix and match and the little box? There, that's lower order, 40%. Lower order. You just have to know the content. Middle order and higher order. These are your open-ended questions. These are where you have to make deductions. Okay? So that's just how the paper gets divided. Now, exam skills. You need to know that an extract must be placed into context. What does that mean? What happens before? What happens after? Okay? And where does it take place? Okay? Whenever you motivate something, whenever you are supposed to give an explanation, okay, and it will be called a motivation, it must be grounded in the text. So if it is a figure of speech question, you need to explain it, and you need to explain how apt it is for the text. The comparison must clearly show what the author is wanting us to see. And that is how we know that it's relevant, that it's appropriate. Okay? You must use the PEE method to answer level 4 and 5 questions. So you take a stand. Yes, I agree. No, I don't agree. Evidence. Support with it, like I said, must be grounded in the text. And then you must explain your evidence as it pertains to the point that you've made. Okay? So, but I'm going to give you examples from an actual question paper. Right. So let's look at the drama now. Now remember, we've already done the short story, and now we see that elements are pretty much the same. Okay? But remember, what I've done first is applicable to both the drama and the short stories. Those questions are invariably going to be there for both. Okay? For both of those genres. Or for all 6 of the genres, in fact, but definitely for the 2 that you're going to answer. So what is, you get setting, character, characterization, plot, theme. Now these 3 here, stage directions, dramatic purpose, and dramatic irony, those are related to the drama specifically. Why? A drama is a performance, okay? So it's on a stage, it's written in dialogue form, and you are going to perform it for people, okay? And yes, you've got your setting, which is the same as your short stories, time and place, when and where, your characters, your interactions, which is your characterization, your plot, you know, the introduction and the rising, climax, falling, denouement, theme, universal messages that we identify and link to a text or an entire drama, in this instance, stage directions. Why do you need stage directions? Because the director of the drama, when it is performed, we need to know where certain things are going to be on stage. We need to know where people are going to be on stage. We need to know who's going to be on stage. And there's a question pertaining to this stage directions in the paper. What does it say? If you were the director of this drama, what would you tell Tommy to do in line so-and-so? Then you must speak about, I would tell him facial expression, body language. I would tell him to frown. I would tell him to stand arms akimbo. I would tell him to raise his voice. So you can use 3 things: facial expression, body language, and tone to answer the question about stage directions. Okay? Dramatic purpose. Why is he choosing to do that? So there's a monologue. Each of the characters have a monologue. But what is the purpose of, say, Mr. M's monologue? Mr. M has a monologue. He stands alone on stage and he speaks to us to make us understand certain things. So he's on stage alone, and that can also be a setting question in terms of the monologue. What is the setting of this monologue? Mr. M is on stage alone and he's speaking to the audience. What is the purpose? He wants us to understand why he is the way that he is now. What led him to this point in his life, okay? And that is dramatic purpose. The question is, why would he put that in there? Why would the person who wrote this drama use that particular picture, use that particular image, do a monologue, do whatever it is that he has done? Thematic irony, basically, when the audience knows something that the characters are unaware of. Okay? And that's just your typical little, if you're looking at the TV, the little series that people are watching currently, I think it's Arend's Play or whatever, if people are listening in and the characters are unaware, that's all that dramatic irony is. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So, this drama is called My Children, My Africa. The plot, intro, rising, climax, falling, denouement. What happens first? An inter-school debate at #1 classroom at Zolile High School. Who is the teacher there? Mr. M. Time rebels against Mr. M and resigns from the team. That's the rising action. So, Mr. M says to Tami, listen, guys, you and Isabel are going to do this quiz at Grahamstown Festival. And, but he asks Isabel, but he doesn't ask Tami. He says to Tami, you'll just do it. And then Tami's like, no, I won't. He rebels against and he resigns from the team. So they don't go to the quiz. Climax. So now Mr. M, very passionate about school and education and his learners. What does he do? Because remember now, they're fighting, they are joining the protest action, they're becoming comrades. So Mr. M becomes an informer. And what does he do? He gives the names of the learners. But although he is labeled Impimpi, informer, that was not why he did it. Mr. M did that to bring the learners back to class. He wanted them to be there to receive education. Why? Because he felt that education and communication was the key to building a successful nation, okay? To ending apartheid, talking. There are violent riots and Mr. M is murdered. Mr. M is murdered at the hands, or loses his life at the hands of people that he considered family, you know, kids that he taught. The comrades, the violent riots are the people that were in his class previously. And when he does that and he becomes an informer, he's murdered because of that. But remember, Tami comes and he tries to warn him, or he does warn him, and Mr. M's like, I'm going nowhere. Falling action. Tami and Isabel meet and they chat, and she asks him some hard questions, you know, like in terms of like, were you there? Did you see it happen? Mr. M is murdered. He's actually murdered in your typical way during the apartheid era, where he was necklaced, so tied around his neck and burned to death at the school. And in the closing, the denouement conclusion, she's at Waarpadsberg. The future is still ours is what she says. Why is Waarpadsberg so important? Because that's Mr. M's place. That's where all his dreams started. Okay, so she goes back there. She says, the future's still ours. What does she mean? We can still do what your vision was, Mr. M. We can still achieve it. So, historical background. Why is this important? Because in order for us to understand the way in which people reacted, we need to understand what was happening at the time. Set in 1984, new constitution. So, the new constitution, tricameral parliament. Black people are not represented. That's basically what it means. Whites, coloured Indians, they have parliamentary representation. So, that means black people don't have a voice. State of emergency. Big deal, guys. Because you know what? No political organizations were allowed to gather. So, there were no political organizations, no media could report, and people could be detained without their identity being revealed. Just think about that. If they say you are guilty of a political crime, then they can take you off the street and they can put you in the police van and off you go. Nobody needs to be told about it. And point in case, one of the learners gets detained and he shouts to Mr. M. He says, Mr. M, he says, tell my mother where I am. Why? Because he knew they didn't have to tell his mother. Okay? And now, please remember, detained without a reason. So if any of them, and Tami chooses to become a comrade in this time, knowing that he can lose his life, he can be detained, all these bad things can happen to him, but he chooses to fight for equal education. Because remember, Tami is rebelling against the Bantu education. Because he realizes, like, Isabel, what do you want to a journalist, so she can do whatever she wants to. Kami like, I can't do that. Like, I thought I could, but the education I'm getting is limiting me. And that is why he feels so strongly about joining the struggle, in spite of what the state of emergency meant. Okay. So, what was Bantu education? This is the thing that Tami was fighting against. It basically meant that money was spent on white education. How did they do that? So, if you look at our ex-model C schools in terms of having swimming pools and rugby fields and science labs and all of those things, that's what the money was spent on. So it was geared towards making white learners more able to achieve higher paying jobs and a better education. Education facilities were racially separated, so you couldn't go to school if you weren't of a particular race. There was segregation. So whites went to those schools, blacks went to those schools, colours went to those schools. Resources were not evenly distributed. I just mentioned it now. Bantu education I feel that it is at the heart of the drama, okay? And this drama is an example of state of emergency literature. It is called state of emergency literature. So all of this happened because a young man decided, I am not satisfied with the education that I'm getting. And he put his life on the line to do this, okay? Remember that. So the themes in here are tradition and culture, friendship, education, justice, the generation gap, power of words versus violence, privilege versus poverty. If you remember, I mentioned earlier that the characters and their interaction will be linked to a theme. Tradition and culture. Who will be linked to the theme of tradition and culture? Mr. M, because he decides for Tami. He wants to tell him how to live his life. Friendship. Tami and Isabel, and Isabel and Mr. M. Education. Everyone's part of that. Okay? Isabel is at the receiving end of very good education. Tami is going to risk his life to fight for the opportunity to have an education as good as Isabel's. Justice. Isabel says, what happened to Mr. M is not justice. It's murder. Okay? In the text she says, that's not justice because the learners felt justice because Mr. M was an informer. Isabel says, no, that's murder. So who would you link to that theme? The generation gap. Clearly, Mr. M and Tami. Power of words versus violence. The comrades and Mr. M. And Isabel also feels that words are the way to go. Words are what is going to win the fight. Privilege versus poverty. That's clearly Isabel and Tami because Isabel's got everything going for her. Good education, she's got money, she's got family, she's got a good home, she's got everything that she needs. And Tami doesn't. And when she looks at what things are like in Kamdebo as opposed to Brakwater, then you can see the idea of privilege and poverty is clearly shown to us. Okay, so these are basically questions about the paper, okay? So the extract, where's your name? Tami says, you won't find it there. I don't want to leave any part of me in this classroom. The question, refer to lines 10 and 11, what tone would he use? And remember, bitter, disdainful, reproachful, resentful, any of those things and any synonyms for that, okay? Remember, I said to you, I'm going to show you how they ask these questions. Why would he use this tone? Why would he be bitter? Why would he be angry? Why would he be rebellious? Because he doesn't want to be associated in any way with the inferior education he received at Zolila High School. And that is why. So, how would he sound? Why would he sound that way? C. Remember I spoke about stage directions? If you were the director, what would you tell Tami to do while saying these lines? So how does he act? You must shake his head, wave his hands, bang on the table, raise his voice. So they'll give you, look at that little extract that they've given you. Okay? And they've said you look at 2 lines. And they've asked you for 1, 2, 3 different things. So 3 marks for 2 little lines. Do you understand how important it is to be able to make sense of the extract? Okay. Then, the question here says refer to line 10 and 12. But in this hand, I'm holding the whole English language. This, and he shows the stone, is just one word in that language. Identify the figure of speech. It's It's any one of those, but we're going to go with metaphor because that's the one that you're going to understand best. Okay? And then the next one, explain why it is relevant. Or the question in this newspaper can say, explain why it is appropriate. Mr. M tries to show that education is more important than violence. Can you see that there are 2 marks and that there are 2 ticks? So, what? Education is the one thing, okay, which is the dictionary, is more important than the stone, which is violence. Do you understand why you must give both parts of that? So, let's go on to the next one. Okay, friendship, remember I spoke about the themes. Friendship is one of the themes in this play. Discuss how this theme is relevant to Tammy and Isabel. Okay, and then there we go. The discussion on friendship, how? The school debate. Meaningful friendship at the literary quiz, because they practice, even though they don't go, they meet to practice. The friendship, it's subjected to strain because Tammy decides to withdraw and join the boycott. Okay? And the rest of the memorandum is there for you to read. 4 to 8. The theme. Now remember I spoke to you about open-ended question? That's an open-ended question. Discuss your view. But discuss your view based on the text. So, you can say yes or no. You can say the play ends on a hopeful note. Yes, it does, because Isabel is a symbol of hope in the drama because she becomes aware of the plight. She promises Mr. M she will not waste her life. Despite the difference in opinion and cultural backgrounds, Tammy and Isabel prove that people of different races can work together, can be friends. But you can also say no. And then what are you going to say? The play ends on a hopeful note. No, it's not hopeful. Why? Mr. M dies very tragically. Tammy compromises his education to join the movement, and he was so, when he was young, he so much loved school. The violence and the lawlessness displayed during the school boycott, it doesn't evoke hope. Okay, but I'm thinking, for our purposes, most of us are going to say yes, because of what Tammy chooses to do. Okay. What I've done here is, and I've done the same on a previous slide, I'm giving you a link to the Mind the Gap resources, which is on the WCEDE portal, and that's the link to that. So you will find everything that I've discussed with you about the drama on there, and you are more than welcome to use it. Grade 12, I trust that the 3 slides or the 3 presentations will help you. I wish you all of the best for this difficult time that awaits you, and I want you to remember that you're special because you are doing this while we are going through a pandemic, but we are makers of history and we are participants of history. I want you to remember that and remain hopeful. Thank you very much for watching.